Career satisfaction from within. Find and follow your true calling or get more satisfaction from what you do by Christopher R. Edgar. Chapter 4. Give yourself permission to enjoy what you do. As anyone who has been to San Francisco knows, if you walk around the city for a while, you're sure to meet some colorful characters. One time I met such a person in the park. I guess I was smiling because she approached me and yelled, "Stop, you're under arrest for smiling without a license." Then she laughed and ran away. On one level, what she said was silly. I don't need a license to smile or to feel or express any emotion. I can legally smile for any reason or no reason at all. On the other hand, what she said contained profound insights into the way we experience and manage our emotions. When we tell someone we are feeling excited or joyful, the typical response, if they care how we are doing, is to ask, "About what?" In other words, people want to know the reason we are having the emotion. If you say you don't know, or that you don't have a rational explanation for feeling the way you do, they'll probably express concern. They'll worry that you're drunk or high on some drug, or perhaps even that you're mentally ill. Maybe they'll express surprise because they can see so many reasons in your life why you shouldn't be happy. The conventional wisdom seems to be that if you have an emotion you can't explain, you must repress it or conceal it from others. If you don't, you're crazy, childish, or otherwise socially unacceptable, and you need therapy or some sort of mood stabilizing drug. As Richard J. Foster writes, in Celebration of Discipline, The Path to Spiritual Growth, modern men and women have become so mechanized that we have snuffed out nearly all experiences of spontaneous joy. How did this become our way of thinking? In our early childhoods, we didn't feel the need to justify our emotions. We would feel spontaneously joyful, sad, angry, and so on, and we wouldn't suppress those feelings simply because we couldn't explain them. Probably, our need to rationalize our emotions stems from how our parents disciplined us as children. When they didn't like the way we expressed our emotions, they would demand an explanation for the reason we acted that way. "Why are you so loud?" they'd ask. "Why are you bouncing off the walls like that? Why are you going so crazy?" and so on. When our parents made this sort of request, they didn't want us to explain why we had the emotions we did. They were upset about how we were expressing our emotions, not our lack of justification for feeling them. Demanding explanation was their way of voicing their annoyance. But our young minds didn't grasp this, and we concluded our parents didn't want us to have emotions we couldn't logically explain. To make sure our parents kept loving and protecting us, we started shaming ourselves whenever we had a feeling we couldn't justify. That habit stuck with us in the childhood. As psychologist Javid Fontana puts it in Managing Stress, much repression comes from early conditioning, during which children are led to associate their emotions with something unpleasant or even downright sinful. Punished for expressing emotions, they grow into adults who just can't allow themselves to speak their minds or to boil over or to have a good time. Sometimes we repress our spontaneous happiness for different reasons. Some clients I have seen have told me they worry what if they let themselves feel inexplicably joyful, they would lose control and their lives would fall into chaos. These people believe they have to stay on their guard to ward off threats and dangers from the world. For some, this sort of attitude was necessary to survive as children. Maybe they had parents who flew into a rage with little provocation, or who abused alcohol and behaved unpredictably or violently. Although it doesn't help them anymore, the sense that they can't let themselves get too happy remains with them. Still others, consciously or otherwise, have learned to see feeling joyful as selfish. They have what many personal development authors call a scarcity mentality. It's as if the earth has some sort of finite happiness supply, and every time you let yourself feel happy, you're depleting that supply and taking away someone else's opportunity to feel good. As I mentioned in the latter exercise, not only is there a potentially infinite happiness supply in the universe, when you go through life feeling peaceful and centered, your merry presence helps others experience those emotions. Unfortunately, when we shame ourselves for having an emotion and repress it, it doesn't go away. It stays in our bodies and create distraction, fatigue, tension in our muscles and other uncomfortable sensations. Our habit of denying ourselves permission to experience emotions unless we can logically explain them, if you will, arresting ourselves for smiling without a license, is harmful to us. As Dr. Sandy Joss writes in Your Body, Your Mind, and Their Link to Your Health, there is no such thing as negative emotion when it comes to a healthy expression of the body mind. It is the suppression, denying, pushing away, or avoidance of these emotions that causes a physical response that can lead to health problems. From a career perspective, our habit of suppressing our spontaneous joy can rob us of much satisfaction we could otherwise experience in our jobs. If we are at work and feeling frustrated, depressed, or bored, we tend to assume our job environments as responsible, our bosses are too demanding, our colleagues are irritating, the computer is too slow, and so on. Sometimes, however, the reason is that we have simply denied ourselves permission to enjoy what we do as we think it would be wrong or unsafe. If this resonates with you, the exercises below are geared toward helping you grant yourself that long overdue permission. Exercise 1. Let your natural happiness be. This exercise is simple. The next time you feel joy, energetic, or blissed out for no apparent reason, just allow that state to persist. Don't shame yourself for having no reason to be happy or search your mind for reasons you ought to feel depressed or frustrated instead. Just let your joy please and empower you. If the feeling starts to seem overwhelming, sit still and breathe deeply for a little while, keeping your eyes focused on a point in the room. Continue breathing fully until you feel more grounded and the intensity of the feeling has subsided. If you find yourself obsessing over whether you have a reason to feel happy or what others are going to think of your emotional state, try removing the label from the sensation you are experiencing. Instead of giving the feeling a name like joy, sadness, and so on, try seeing the feeling as nothing more than energy moving through your body. This energy is neither good nor bad, neither appropriate nor inappropriate. It's just a natural part of the operation of your body, like eating and sleeping. There's nothing wrong or unacceptable about it. All you are doing when you give your joy permission to be is letting your natural emotional energy move unhindered. Some people get scared during these moments of spontaneous joy because they worry that they are going to become unproductive. They'll be so happy that they won't care about getting things done. Others worry that their misery or indifference has held their lives together and that if they let themselves feel happy, everything will fall apart. If you feel this way, remember that your foot, if you will, is on the accelerator. You ultimately decide how intense you will allow your emotions to become. You can repress or manage your spontaneously happy states in the way you have learned to do all your life if you sense things are getting out of hand. However, if you remember that moments of sudden happiness, like moments of fear or anger, are fleeting and quickly pass away, you'll likely have the courage and perspective to fully experience your joy. Letting your spontaneous happiness exist can have quite an impact on your working life. I know that when I started fully permitting my joy to be, I began having moments where I randomly have a great time doing something I used to consider dull. I experienced moments of ecstasy, filling meetings into my calendar, organizing my office, and doing other things I used to dread. It definitely hit home that the attitude I bring to my daily activities is just as important as, or even more important than, the nature of what I do in determining how fulfilled I am. When you connect with and no longer push away this energy, even what you thought were the dearest activities at work become infused with a peaceful and perhaps even exciting quality. Exercise 2. Let the world affect you. Many of us have developed ways of protecting ourselves from the feelings, events in the world can trigger in us. When something happens in our lives that has us feel hurt, we sometimes consciously or otherwise create ingenious strategies to avoid experiencing that sensation again. Some people, for example, have learned to tighten muscles in various parts of their bodies to numb themselves to feeling in those areas. Others have learned to dissociate, to lose themselves in thought and focus their attention away from what's going on in their bodies. When we use these strategies for avoiding feeling, we protect ourselves to some extent from experiencing hurt or sadness, but we also block our ability to feel vibrant and joyful. The dullness this creates in our lives makes it difficult for us to appreciate what we do for a living, regardless of how enjoyable, lucrative, and prestigious it looks to the world. When we are separated from the joy of living, the problem isn't that we are in a career we aren't passionate about, it's that we are incapable of experiencing passion at all. As psychologist Christine Calvert puts it, in getting our bodies back, whenever we control our experience, we sacrifice a measure of vitality. Because we exert so much energy on controlling and rejecting our wrong experiences, we have fewer resources available that enables us to tolerate any experience. How do we restore our ability to love what we do? It would be nice if we could bring back our joy de vivre without having to feel the anger, despair, and other difficult emotions we usually avoid feeling. Unfortunately, that doesn't work. We need to meet the sensations we have run from head on. When we fully allow the experiences we have been avoiding to be, we'll regain access to the passion and other sensations we are wanting in our lives. Sometimes, as I talked about in section 1, this happens naturally when we simply take time to sit in undistracted silence. If we turn off the TV and radio, stop fidgeting and tapping, and still our minds for a few minutes, and we have the composure to breathe through the sensations that come up, we can start reconnecting with what we have avoided. If we can firmly hold our attention on the difficult feelings, no matter how irritating or even agonizing they are, will not only restore our ability to experience them, but they'll also begin to pass away. If removing distractions alone doesn't help you experience the sensations you have avoided, try focusing your attention on details of your surroundings you may have missed before. Notice the intricacy and beauty of each object, even the most everyday ones. For instance, you might try closely examining the labyrinth of vents on a leaf on the moonscape of the stucco on the walls of the building. If this isn't a usual practice for you, you may feel surprised at how much anxiety it can bring up. You may get a sense that if you allowed yourself to fully pursue what's going on around you, you'd be overwhelmed and perhaps even injured. When the resistance arises, gently and firmly hold your awareness on your surroundings, and the discomfort will eventually fade. When the resistance has subsided, notice that even though you fully opened your senses to the world, you're still alive and unharmed. The realization that it's safe for you to let life in, to allow your surroundings to fully impact you, will likely fill you with a sense of peace. Recognize also that the same is true of the intense sensations that may arise in your body from time to time. You can fully open yourself to your joy, sadness, and even anger without harming yourself or someone else. The more you develop your ability to stay focused on what's going on inside and outside you, the more access you'll gain to the passion and drive you are missing. Beyond getting you more connected to your raw energy and ambition, this exercise can help you gain a more concrete idea of what you want from your career. For instance, perhaps you have found yourself running down a list of career possibilities and feeling blessed about all of them. With deeper access to your inspiration, you may find yourself getting distinctly more excited about some of your choices and narrowing down your list. Exercise 3. Notice people's response to your joy. Now that you have experimented a little with just allowing your spontaneous joy to be, try going out into the world while you are in such a state. Notice how differently people respond to you when you allow your natural love of life to surface without suppressing or judging it. I suspect you'll notice your state has to some extent rubbed off on them, that even strangers begin smiling, saying hello, or coming close to you more often. The purpose of this exercise is to show you the profound effect your emotional state can have on that of others. This is particularly important to keep in mind if you are considering changing your career to something you are more passionate about and are concerned about the impact of the transition on your loved ones. Many people worry about the criticism they may get from their significant others, relatives, or friends when they change direction in life. They wonder if making a change will appear selfish and inconsiderate of others, particularly if they have children and can expect a lower income from doing what they want in the short term. What people don't usually consider is how the joy they find in doing what they love will likely uplift those around them as well, and how they may bring others down with the misery they feel in their current positions. People are far more empathic than we usually think. The social convention may be to tell people we are doing fine when we actually aren't, or to hold back our joy for fear of looking crazy, but doing these things doesn't fool anyone. Even if you aren't considering a career transition and just want to find more satisfaction in what you do, it's important to understand the impact how your feeling has on those around you. Getting this point motivates you to continue working on developing a sense of wholeness as it helps you see that you are benefiting others, not just yourself, by gaining the recognition that you are a complete human being. Shakti Gaman nicely describes our ability to positively impact each other with our emotional states in Living in the Light, a guide to personal and planetary transformation. Whether you are washing the dishes, taking a walk, or building a house, if you are doing it with a sense of being right where you want to be and doing what you want to be doing, that fullness and joy in the experience will be felt by everyone around you. It's the same when you are just being. If you walk into a room feeling whole and expressing yourself in whatever way feels right to you, then everyone in the room will be affected and catalyzed in their own growth process. Many books and articles try to teach how to succeed in your career by recommending things to say, ways to move your body, the right people to befriend, and so forth. This kind of advice includes, for example, stock answers to interview questions or body language you can use to appear trustworthy or commanding. The basic purpose of all these techniques is to convey the impression that you are confident, assertive, and conscientious person. One problem with these techniques, however, is that they don't take into account how sensitive we are to each other's emotions. No matter how much you practice your confident body language, for example, others will sense if you aren't coming from a genuinely confident place. Improving your emotional state does more to inspire those around you than any learned technique. Conclusion: I have packed a lot of material into this book, and the number of exercises in it may seem daunting to people wanting quick solutions to their career dilemmas. If this is true for you, it will probably help to look for the sections with the most relevance to your situation and at least start by doing just those exercises. Beyond any of the individual exercises, the main idea of this book is that you can achieve the most success and fulfillment in your career when you come to it from a place of wholeness rather than looking to your career to make you a complete or adequate person. With the peace and composure that comes from feeling whole, you can take risks, overcome obstacles, and step into the leadership role necessary to create the career situation you want. Whatever practices you adopt to find more career satisfaction, keep the goal of realizing your completeness and perfection in mind.